But
I bet that was quite the conversation.
it was actually, and it was actually a really good one, fun one, and
Yeah.
just like him, like I always meet individuals that are always good at what they do, and or just I find it inspiring also when someone focuses solely like on one thing, and so like it's like I came across your page, and well, I was amazed also at the age that you kind of became aware
Yeah.
of what was going on.
Yes.
Um, and before we start, well, like if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So is everything going? Oh my, this is the first time I've done this.
But
Like
you,
in this like professional like in person setting.
but thank you for taking the time, because I feel like I'm a very small podcaster, and again, I think that I don't even like, it's so tough. Like I don't have the credentials to say like I've worked in videography or any interview setting. I really don't know much about anything, and so that's why I started.
That's the best way to start though.
And sometimes like I can even come off as like I ask the dumb questions maybe that you know how like you're in a classroom setting, and it's always you're always so aware of the people around you that like you don't want to be the like considered the dumb one and like
Right.
raise your hand like, oh hey, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
Because you're supposed to know what it means, or something like
Yes.
that.
Yeah. And it feels like everyone else knows what it means.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they might be completely clueless, you still
Absolutely.
feel like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, this feels very professional. At least walking in here, it's like, oh my, this guy knows what he's doing.
Thank you. But you've done a lot of seminars though.
Yes, yeah. So my journey began sort of in the midst of the pandemic when I found myself to just kind of be all consumed with social media in a way that was similar to the behavior of some of my peers, but I mean, it was something that everyone had, everyone used it, everyone, it had its own sort of internal language and culture that I continuously wanted to be a part of, and I became all consumed by it, and it eventually became kind of this obsessive compulsive behavior that I would have, and I would be wanting to check my phone to see if this person responded, but I was entranced by how many people were liking a post, how long it took someone to respond, the followers, and it became a barrier in my relationships with others and relationship with myself. So I decided to delete social media for 60 days, and that was really the catalyst for everything that followed thereafter. And
was there a trigger that made you kind of like reconsider why you should have started this? Was it something you saw from a psychologist? Like what was it, or was it just you seeing someone else maybe disassociating from social media?
Yeah, it was a very gradual feeling. I think it was the moment I got a phone, which was in middle school. I immediately downloaded social media after that, and I knew that I wanted to, and I didn't really consult my parents on what they would think about that. But they told me to, just to go ahead and do it, but I had no sort of education on what that world was like. And you are entering a completely different world when you go on social media. I mean,
of course,
it's got its own ecosystem, and I did that. I was very young, and I downloaded Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok, and I think I didn't really realize how much it was consuming my life when prior to the pandemic. So when the pandemic hit and we were already limited to a lot of socialization, I turned toward my phone to get that social aspect, as we all did, but I found myself becoming drained, and I mean, it wasn't authentic, and I was searching for that connection that was raw and real, and it was like this, it was always present, it was always there, but there was nothing tangible about it. There was nothing that, I mean, I couldn't lay a finger on what exactly I was searching for oftentimes when I was scrolling and when I was when I was interacting online, but it wasn't satisfying. It was a very passive way to just amuse myself. And so then I deleted it for 60 days, and there's so much that happened during that period that, I mean, I can go as complex. Or
like in one of the chapters, I kind of find myself I had a similar experience. It's kind of like when you always carry your phone in your pocket.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It like you can't even feel like a vibration, right?
Yes.
Like out of notifications. But I even tried it to where I would put away my phone and like actually have to go do chores outside and just kind of like focus on that. But then it's so weird that I'd feel the same vibration without ever having anything there.
Yes.
And kind of like the dinner experience that you had with your family,
Yes.
where you're kind of waiting for something to pop up, like expecting that something should be there.
Mm-hmm.
But then you feel a sort of rejection because there's nothing there.
Right.
Like, and you start feeling these, I don't know, it's very complex, the type of feelings that you start feeling, right?
It's very complex. It's very complex, and it's there's a lot that I could say about that. And there were those pivotal moments that were sort of light bulb moments where I was like, oh, maybe, this is affecting me. And I removed something so prevalent from my life, and now I'm experiencing this withdrawal. And what you're talking about, that's called a phantom vibration. And it's like where you think that the vibration is there, but it's an illusion.
But the thing is that it's so, like, you could physically feel it.
You can feel it, yeah. Some people, you can feel it and you can hear it sometimes. I don't know if
wow, okay, I haven't heard about the hearing.
Yeah, so for you, it's mainly you feel the vibration. Oh, mm-hmm. That's a unique experience I haven't heard of yet.
I think that it, as much as technology is like captivating, I like the fact that you wrote your experience on paper.
Yes.
But when did it become an idea to actually make it a book?
Yeah, thank you. This is actually one of my favorite questions. Yeah, I mean the point of it all was to never write the book. That was never the end goal. That was never the outcome. In fact, I feel like that if that was the goal, that would have been to miss the point entirely from my original idea of why I wanted to do it. And the point was to understand what I thought, and to get inside my mind, and to write down my thoughts, to write down what I felt and what I observed, and how I was perceiving the world without social media. And so I kept this journal, which it's an account of everything. I was 16 years old, mm-hmm. and now I'm 20, and I still have the journal, and sometimes I look back at it, and I mean the penmanship and the way the sentences are structured, and it's very messy, but it was me. It was very much my voice, being 16 years old and describing this digital world that I was born into, and so it was like every time I read that, I think of what it was like to be me during that time. But I kept the journal, but I never thought to write a book about it. That idea never came until the end of the 2 months, and I was looking at it, and I was just physically reading everything, and I thought, what if there was a way to make this tangible and share this with the world? But I knew I wanted the story. I knew there was power in the story, but I also wanted a scientific perspective as well.
Okay.
To kind of help people understand the why behind the behavior. And so then I reached out to Dr. Bilal Gandor, who is a professor of psychology at Elon University. That was a university very close to my hometown. And and we collaborated on the book together. I mean, it all started with a cold email. I mean, it was, it was a brief Zoom session, and we talked about social media and technology and its intersection within our social lives, and then after the 2 months, I said, what if we were to create something out of this, and what if I were to have my journal entries and you were to respond to them in a psychological way, and we were to create this partnership, this collaboration, and it turned out to be something very, very incredible. And he is such a mentor to me, and I mean, we have a great relationship, and I'm just very grateful for him and all of that.
What do you think he saw in you that motivated him to also publish a book with you?
I think he talks about this sometimes, because I know he's been asked this. I think he would describe it as he saw kind of the authenticity in my words, and this kind of compulsion to understand, and this curiosity, and I think he knew that it was genuine, that I wasn't just doing it to pad my resume or to make something out of it, to do it for status. I mean, it was truly intrinsically motivated, and I think you can sense those things. I mean, you speak to a lot of people, like you probably can feel like when they're talking about something, it's genuine, it's authentic.
I think you can feel when, I guess you're kind of being deceived, and when it's being genuine. Yeah. But I think I can only grasp it whenever I have the person in front of me. But when I have Zoom calls, I totally hate Zoom calls.
Yeah, me too.
Because eye contact is one of the ways I guess you can see into people and see like how they're speaking. Yeah. Their emotions,
the hands,
and I do a lot of hand gestures too. Yeah. But through a screen or even through FaceTime, I've read articles where it's like you're never making eye contact with the other person. It's kind of like just a reflection of yourself, and you're just seeing yourself, and never truly getting the same feeling that you get out of a real conversation. You're never invaded by doubt. You're invaded less by doubt whenever you're through a FaceTime call than when you're actually speaking to a person, again, because we've lost that genuine connection. So a lot of things happen in that case, but I mean, I've totally felt when people are being genuine and when they're not. What I wanted to ask you though, or kind of like go back, it's like this sort of critical thinking and having to write down your thoughts. What do you think helped you get there, or you think that it also has to do with kind of how your parents were formed? Because I have this dilemma or there's this dilemma that I think is going to happen, that obviously like there's this neuroplasticity in our brains, and so it's like we might become something to where we want it to become connected, but because we're now in a social media world, we don't even learn to understand ourselves, and yet we want us to understand others. So this sort of critical thinking is essential growing up, but not everyone is, I guess, can adopt it as easily if their environment doesn't support it.
Entirely, yes. Yeah, I really, I guess, in that, when I was 16, the idea of writing down my thoughts and having to come to the reality of being very in tune with my emotions and the behaviors of other people and understanding my mind, I mean, that seemed like it was a very introspective task. But there were often times, I didn't really have any clear picture of how to do it. I just knew that I wanted to, and there were moments where I would feel these compulsions to just write it down, and so I think it comes with, at least for me in that moment, it just kind of came with this curiosity and this wonder within myself and within the world that I wanted to document. And it wasn't perfect. I mean, I look at the book now. I mean, you probably see, like, the sentences are, I mean, they're very simple. They're very, you could probably tell a 16-year-old wrote it.
but I think with language, that's key though.
Yeah.
Like, when I read a book that a researcher wrote, I can barely understand the language. Mm-hmm. So what am I really getting out of it?
Yeah.
Like, if the language is easier for me to understand, like, honestly, I was like, okay, this book is really easy to read. Like,
yeah. Like very simple. Yeah.
Like it helps me. Like, less is more is what I always say. And so it's like, if you don't have to make it that complicated, but just even getting to that point of critically thinking and having to face yourself with your own words, we don't do that anymore.
Yes, and I do believe that, I mean, I guess there was a degree of critical thinking and introspection needed to write the book. And I think I do give a lot of credit to my parents and to the way my childhood evolved. My parents were always, they were teachers, but they always they never created the idea that the path was so clear. And what I mean by that is they allowed us to, my sister and I, my younger sister and I, to develop this sort of self-sufficiency by generating our own resourcefulness.
Okay.
And so, you know, they would kind of give us these insights to what we should be doing and how we should be doing it, and, you know, helping around the house and you know, focusing on academics and extracurriculars and things like that. But it was, and they would show us how to do things, but then from there, I mean, we would teach ourselves. And so there, I guess what I'm trying to say is there was this idea in the back of my mind that my parents, you know, would not always be there to help. And so you have to learn to figure things out and forge your own path. And that was a gift that they gave us, that my father and my mom gave my sister and I. And I'm very, very grateful for that. And they were always encouraging of what I wanted to do in my life and what I wanted to pursue, but they were never like, you know, you have to do this, you have to go down this path. And so that was, I do attribute a lot of that sense of wonder and desire to learn about the world to my parents.
With being such a thinker like this at 16, how do you face the isolation from your peers, even in, like, when you're actually with them?
Yeah.
You might even feel like...
Oh, I did. I mean, whenever I was at school, I didn't have social media, and so a lot of what they would be talking about, a lot of the conversations they would be talking about social media and the trends going on, and I felt like I couldn't really contribute to those conversations because, I mean, I didn't have it, and I felt myself asking, you know, am I connected or am I disconnected? Because I was you know, having more face-to-face relationships and conversations, but there was this whole online culture that I just wasn't in on. I wasn't a part of. And so there were moments of isolation, and there were those moments where I started to realize, you know, the beauty of social media in those contexts where, you know, you do see a part of the world that's important to stay aware of, and you can connect with people online in an authentic way if you're intentional. But I feel like that period of time was important for me to recognize that face-to-face conversations and like this and being together. I mean, that's really the way that we as a species have evolved and are supposed to communicate. So I never doubted that the experience I was having was not worthwhile.
With the seminars that you hold and the conversations you've had, is there a right age to introduce social media into teenagers' life?
Is there a right age to introduce social media? I would say that it's a very subjective experience. It's a very tailored approach. Every family is different. Every dynamic is different. Every individual is different.
Mm-hmm.
There's the question of the time to get a phone and the time to get social media, and I think it really, because sometimes the phone is used mainly for communication purposes and connection and things like that, and social media I think maybe could be delayed a little bit more than the phone, but usually kids right now these days are starting to get phones around early middle school, some elementary school, and so then the question of introducing social media might come a little later, or it might come immediately. But I would say if you can delay social media for as long as you can, so that the child can get as much of the world and absorption of the physical world as possible before they enter the online environment. But it's more so for the purpose of it's a maturation type of thing, where we want to make sure that they are mature enough to understand the dangers and the challenges and what they are getting themselves into, so that they can develop the resilience and the self-effectiveness to restrict themselves when they need to.
But I think that's the toughest part.
That's the toughest part at any age. Yeah.
At any age, and to me, like, that question to you is like, then how do you motivate people to actually balance their life, or really find themselves in a situation where they are not being invaded by these technologies? Because
Yes.
it's like, self-restraint, I think, is the toughest part. It's something that you can tell people,
Yeah.
but not something they'll necessarily do.
Right.
Because
Yes.
I even
I'm guilty of it sometimes too. Yeah, it is. It's tough, and I mean, especially because technology is, even the mere presence of it has the power to fracture our attention without ever even triggering our awareness. And that, I mean, the physicality of it, I mean, holding it and seeing it light up and seeing the noise that it makes, and then going into the device and being, attention is being pulled in all these different directions. And I mean, it's very captivating, and it's an entire experience that just, increases arousal and increases this shifts our attention immediately. I mean, so the question of whether or not it can get attention and maintain attention, I mean, we know that is it's obviously very powerful in doing that. So from that perspective, how do you not make it do that? A lot of it is self-restraint and education, and there are different ways you can do that. And I think, at least for me, the most powerful mechanism that I've tried is making it more difficult for yourself to access the platforms, to go on the platforms.
Okay.
And so that means, whether that means removing the social media completely from your phone, and when you want to go on, logging on your computer and doing that whole thing, making it less triggering to go on social media in moments of boredom and in moments of need of stimulation, because we know that boredom is often the number one way as to why we enter the platforms in the first place. These
boredom. But boredom can also be key to creativity.
Yes, which is why the importance of creating a higher tolerance for boredom, which comes often by doing nothing and, and just kind of being in your stillness, and I mean, increasing your tolerance for boredom basically comes from being bored and giving yourself the permission to not be stimulated all the time, which is hard because we live in a very hyper-stimulating world.
Do you think you formed habits while you were younger that helped you keep focused on one thing? One example for me is that I didn't start reading books until recently, like I would say like 3 years ago, and somehow even reading language that I didn't necessarily understand the first time I read it really helped me, and also just having this habit of reading 20 pages a day really even helped me uh, expand my vocabulary so that I could better explain myself
I
to
see.
people, and open the idea of better questions, having a better conversation. So, like, for you, was it, or do you have other habits that help you not have to feel like you're connected?
I see. Yes. So I I don't. So when I'm eating, when I have my meals, I really try to not have any sort of technology while I'm eating. So I don't like to be on my phone while I'm eating. I don't really like to be watching television. I liked that kind of presence with the meal and enjoying that. Particularly I'm eating with other people, hopefully. But when I'm eating alone, I mean that is also a very important time to just kind of be and turn off the rest of the world. Also, if I'm standing in line somewhere, the desire to pull out your phone and just fill those lull moments with something. I mean, it's very much there, but I try to not. I really love people watching. I think that there's always something about the environment that can be interesting if you make it interesting. And but that marvel of the environment, that curiosity about it, comes more when you give yourself the space to not be stimulated all the time. Because the moment you go into your phone, even if you want to send a text message, it's really easy to get wrapped up in all these other directions that you could go. And we know that some of the most highest creative abilities come from being in solitude, being with your thoughts, and being bored. I mean, that's how children. That's why children are so imaginative and playful, and full of life and whimsy. Because I mean, they're always doing, they're always thinking, they're always wondering.
Do you think then, like, we could even do anything about it if kids are using iPads at such a young age?
Yeah, that's what I'm scared of. That's really what I'm afraid of. Yeah, I mean, you give a toddler an iPad sometimes, and it's almost innate to them that they know how to use it. I mean, you've seen that.
Yeah. And that's why I was asking you my previous question, like, are we gonna be wired to already be receptive to these things, and then make books, make writing, make actual critical thinking something that we're not really attracted to, so it's put on the back burner, and now we're these like, have you seen Wally? Like, are we gonna become that then? Like, are we gonna become so captured by what they feed us, and that's it? Like, we no more creativity, no more critical thinking, because it's so tough to think. My mentor always says, he's like, the hardest thing I'm gonna ask you to do is think.
Oh my good. I mean, yes. I mean, to stay focused for a prolonged period of time and to get into your flow state. I mean, that getting into that zone of just thinking, and like where you are in pure focus. I mean, considering all of the distractions that we have, I mean, that is a true skill. And I mean, what I can say about children and critical thinking and technology and books and all of that is, I do know that we crave what we're exposed to. And so if we expose children to the books and to the reading and to the writing, then they're going to crave that. The moment you give a child an iPad, they're going to remember how stimulating that experience is. And I'm not saying that, technology has no place in the early years of our life. I think, there are educational programs out there like Sesame Street has actually been shown to encourage play outside of that, outside of watching the program. And so there are moments where technology can serve a role in the early years, but it's about intention, and it's about where and when and how much is correct. And there's science out there that kind of helps to navigate these different developmental periods and how to implement technology in the right ways for children.
But I think that'd be asking too much of children if one can't even do it. Like if a parent can't even restrain themselves from constantly being invaded by clickbait or anything like that, then how can you teach something you don't even know?
Yeah, you I guess you wouldn't be able to. I guess you wouldn't be able to teach something you wouldn't know, which is why parents and the role that they play are incredibly important. I did a experiment with chimpanzees in the fall of my sophomore year, where I went to the zoo twice a week, and I put an iPad in front of chimpanzees.
Did you ask the zoo to do it, or?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was a whole sort of. I mean, I had to send in a proposal. I had to, It was a research experiment, and it was. I did it with a primatologist. I had no experience with chimpanzees or anything before this, but we share more than 98% of our DNA with them. And of course, we can't say who we are. We are the way we are because of chimpanzees, because both species, humans and chimps, have evolved. We would have to compare them to all the primates in the phylogenetic tree. But
the crazy thing, though, is that it's like one strand. It made all the difference.
Yes, yeah.
That to me is insane.
That's fascinating. That is truly fascinating. But I wanted to see how chimpanzees, a very closely related species, would react to technology.
Why start there? Why not babies?
To be honest, good question. Probably because actually chimpanzees they're a bit more easier to do experiments with in terms of just the regulations.
Okay.
I would have to there would be a lot of different hurdles I'd have to go through.
You're right, and with all the experiments, it's like you could maybe do something that you didn't intend to, like a human.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I went to the zoo twice a week, and I put an iPad in front of chimpanzees, and I was recording their behaviors through an application called Zoo Monitor, and I had a whole ethnography.
What is that?
It's like a whole kind of compilation of different behaviors that chimpanzees show, like self-grooming and mirroring and play and eating and all the behaviors. So I had to learn all the behavioral taxonomy of chimpanzees, and it was very fascinating. And what we saw was that there were subjective differences in which chimpanzees interacted with the iPad.
Based on what?
Based on experience and age. And so like the juveniles, the teenagers, they seem to be rather interested in the iPad. They would sit there. There was one chimpanzee, he was the alpha male, and he would spend a lot of time alone, but he was captivated by it, and he would just sit there kind of self-grooming himself, looking at his reflection and mirroring his own behaviors. And for him, it could be argued that it was very positive enrichment. But we noticed that the baby, the infant, was not at all interested in the iPad, and we theorized that was because her mom was not interested. And so the whole theory of sort of observational learning and how what our parents do is, everything that you as a parent are doing is being closely monitored by your child, and at least for humans that can affect the type of material culture that we are using and how we are evolving that material culture and how we use technology and what our children are observing when we are using it.
What was did you show the iPad with, like, when the mom was pregnant, or whenever the baby was already born?
When the baby was already born. So
Okay.
the baby would always follow the mother everywhere she went. So she was very attentive to whatever her mom was doing, and would rarely kind of go off on her own. But it was just interesting to see that there are these subjective differences in even how chimpanzees show attention to a novel object.
How do you use this type of knowledge to teach?
Yeah, I think that, at least for chimpanzees, it's they're a very closely related species to us, and there are certain cognitive underpinnings that are similar between chimpanzees and humans.
Mm-hmm.
But when I present this information in presentations, I often make the point of the importance of observational learning in the early years, because even chimpanzees, they learn through teaching. They make tools, and they learn to make tools by watching their mothers. And the tools they use, it's not digital technology, but it's a type of technology. It's their technology, and they've evolved their technology just as we have our digital world as well. And so the way that we teach our children, and how the material culture that we are learning, that we are using, that if our children are watching that, that does have a profound effect on their interest in it and their curiosity about it.
When you're teaching, how receptive is a crowd? Mm-hmm. Do you ever ask them to put up their phones, or how does that change whenever you're speaking, like, on your experience, like based off your experience?
Yeah, I've never, now that I think about it, I've never asked them to put away their phones. Whenever I do Zoom presentations or webinars,
mm-hmm.
I will ask them to put their cameras on, and I feel like that's a pretty typical ask,
mm-hmm.
but at least I actually didn't start asking that until very recently, and I'm so glad that I do, because it makes so much of a difference when you can see the audience reaction and their facial expressions, and how they're reacting to the content, because it makes it a better educational experience for them,
mm-hmm.
and it helps me be a better presenter, because it doesn't feel like I'm just speaking to myself. I don't like feeling like I'm just speaking to myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But why did you start asking people to turn on their camera? Do you feel like mm-hmm. people weren't listening?
I knew that they would be listening, because they'd be asking questions, but I asked them to turn on their camera because I knew that I would be a better presenter if I could visually see them, if I could see them actively responding non-verbally to the content, and it actually helps them participate more, because there's psychology behind that, but if you know that you are being perceived by someone else, then the chances of your attention being on the content is going to be higher.
And so at least they'd ask questions, so they were actively listening.
Yes, yeah, but I've never asked people to turn their camera. To not have their phone.
Okay.
Which is, that might be something to consider if I feel like it's a problem.
So is phone usage, technology usage, an emotional hijack?
Oh wow, that's powerful. Emotional hijack in terms of how we connect with each other,
or how we connect to ourselves.
Oh,
is what I'm asking. Like,
I see.
Like, what is it that promotes us, or like kind of even encourages us to keep on doing it? Because again, like, I would also like to find a solution, but the thing again, it becomes very subjective, because is it an emotional thing, is it a physical thing? Like, could it change? Could we bring upon a change if the phone devices were physically different? Were like, what are we seeking here?
Yeah.
Like
What are we seeking?
I call it an emotional hijack because why else would you really use your phone? You know, like you want to be receptive to something. You want to feel like you're part of society, right? That's why I said emotional hijack. Like what is it that we're seeking then? Like
Yeah, I think it's something emotional that has turned very physical as well. And what I mean by that is feeling the presence of the phone, and even if it's like you're talking about it being in your pocket and the vibration and knowing that it's there, that in itself creates a sense of security, to know that people have their phone with them, and that it's there because they know how much information's attached to it, and for some people it feels like their world. And there's something called nomophobia, which is the fear of losing your phone. And sometimes
Okay.
you sometimes when you feel like you've lost your phone, like you do go into stress sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, where's my phone?
You feel like you've missed so many text messages and so many calls out of important people, and then you come to realize maybe I'm not that important.
Yes, yeah. So I would say it's something emotional that we have become accustomed to priming our minds with, in terms of what we expect from the technology, in terms of this attention being on us,
Okay.
and feeling sort of that we are needed and feeling wanted to be needed through the device based on what it shows us through notifications and likes and those things. And then that has kind of created this physical dependence to have it there. There's kinesthetic factors associated with it. You look at the evolution of the mobile phone and how we used to have flip phones, and now we have smartphones. And so it's important to think about how the changes of the technology are also congruent with what we are expecting from the technology in terms of efficiency and effectiveness and things of that nature. But there are certain elements to social media and to the device that are very in tune in many ways with human nature. And what I mean by that is
okay. But because I'm like I'm not anti-tech, but I'm like, we have very smartphones that are are capable of an array of functions, right? But then that also means that we're taking something away from ourselves without really knowing. And sure, maybe evolution got us to this point, but what is that? What are the consequences that we're gonna pay in the next 100 years of that exchange?
Right. Yeah. It's hard to say because we're all sort of guinea pigs in this decades-long experiment of what's truly going to happen, what's truly going to manifest, and it's what's difficult about it is it's difficult to measure exactly. There's a lot of different broad assumptions being made about technology out there, but it's very difficult to truly get a handle on what's actually true because it is such a subjective experience. And we can develop solutions, we can develop more theories as to what works and what doesn't, and what we know is good for our children and people of all ages, but at least in terms of social media, it creates this sense of security, this sense of esteem, fulfillment that might sometimes be true, but it can also create the illusion of some of these human needs being met. And so that's where escapism might manifest, where we might go to social media to feel a certain fulfillment of a certain need when it may not always.
Because I was listening to your research, and I was surprised when you said that being abusing a substance or even abusing alcohol has the same effects as abusing technology or a phone. Like that is insane.
Yes, yeah, it is. Oh, it's so nice you remember that. there was that. I think that's one of my slides that, they've sort of compared the reaction of the brain to social media and compared it to how the brain reacts when it's on a drug or substance abuse. And what we know is that people who have experienced substance abuse, sometimes they experience impairment in areas of the brain responsible for memory or self control. And
interesting.
yes,
okay.
And so the question of if social media is going to create the same impairment is still very much up in the air. If we believe that it increases affects the reward circuitry in the brain the same way that other substances do. We don't know what that looks like right now in terms of how it's going to affect kind of the biology of memory and things like that.
Well, now that you say that, the other day I was reading an article that it says Gen Z is the most violent age group of all society, and I guess that would kind of explain that. I guess you're more reactive. You also used you had a list of acronyms, BRB,
You did your research.
a whole list of that I find that very interesting because again, I only try to talk about my experience because I don't know others' experience, but it's like when I started reading books, it's kind of like I came to an epiphany moment, okay, I get it. Language is the key to connect all of us.
Yes.
But in today's society, we use so many short letters. It's like BRB, like be right back, or on my way. What is that essentially? I just started questions. What essentially is that gonna do to us? Are we gonna not be able to understand each other? Are we gonna be able to explain our feelings? Because even to kindle any type of relationship that's meaningful, I think that it's so important the way that you say your words, because then the other person will actually get it. But if we're using such short terms all the time, it's kind of like you get a pulse and that's it. You don't ever get a lifeline out of people.
Right. Yeah. Language is really powerful, and what I can say about the acronyms that we've created online is that that's kind of a reflection of this own inner digital culture, and we've established these to make things more efficient in our online communication, and you even see that through emoticons and emojis.
Oh, emoticon. Okay.
Emojis, yeah.
Okay.
We are naturally gestural creatures. I mean, we express nonverbals I'm doing it right now. They're always where we are never in a state where we are not expressing some sort of nonverbal communication. And we have even created this sort of expressionism through the emojis that we use. And you might say something in a message and then add an emoji to it, or you might just send a message with one emoji. And they're supposed to kind of encompass some sort of emotional dialogue, and
even though you're not feeling it, though,
even if you may not be feeling it, even if perhaps you may not know how to particularly explain what you're feeling.
That's my problem with texting. It's like sometimes I sound too literal and people think I'm mad at them when it's like, no, I'm just trying to explain something. And it's so hard, in today's age, people don't pick up the phone anymore.
I know. It's sad. And I want to hear the intonation in your voice.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's key to kind of deciphering what the other person's trying to say and in what manner, because texting, again, it's so new, so novel that it's like, what do you really mean? And sometimes people don't get what you mean. Yeah. It's very complicated.
Yes. And sometimes I even find when I'm texting, if I'm saying something that might be taken too literally, I'll add an emoji to it so the person doesn't take it so literally. You know, I don't want to come across as too assertive or too dominant. So I'll add an emoji to kind of like chill things down a little bit. And I just find myself that, you know, that's just interesting that that's a behavior that I do. And then I've seen other people do just kind of to kind of shape the sentence in a more expressive way, but I do think about, you know, how is this changing the way that we are articulating how we feel, and
that articulating, like writing is becoming a lot less common. It even with today's AI powered apps, it makes things, it facilitate things, but like in what other aspects is our life going to become tougher?
In a lot of ways. I mean, I think that there are ways that technology can expand some of these human traits, such as creativity and critical thinking and connection. But we really need to look at the ways that it can expand those without completely exploiting them. And that comes with creating models and algorithms that expand this visual network of things that allow us to brainstorm more effectively and to be more creative and create a sort of map of what we can do and imagination and things like that. Yeah.
What percentage of people within your group you think actually apply the practice that you are trying to teach?
What percentage? That's funny you say that. I think I read something about this yesterday in the Pew Research, where it was giving statistics about how many teens like actually have taken steps to limit their screen time.
Because I feel like what you're doing is very important, and but it's just so hard to apply.
It is, and from what we've seen, I can't remember, and I don't want to give you an exact statistic without fully knowing, but there are a lot of young people that understand that it is challenging, and they want to take the steps to kind of reduce their screen time or social media use, or these things like comparison and social comparison and FOMO that they might feel like are really manifesting online, but they just don't know how to do it, and they're still seeking something more that's preventing them from wanting to do it. And so there are teens who I've seen my peers, you know, try to take measures to reduce their screen time. They'll delete social media for a period of time, or they will have time limits. They'll put their phone in grayscale, that setting, or do not disturb. And sometimes they say it's been very effective, and sometimes they're like, I still feel like I'm falling back into the loop of things, back into the trap, and that's a very true reality. But I have seen incredible human capacity to change in regards to this digital well-being context, and so it is possible, and it is challenging. It does take a high degree of restraint and resilience and awareness and a good degree of maturity as well, I'd say.
I tried this only because my mentor also kind of told me, like when I used to get a text message and I used to get a notification from whatever platform or even a message, I immediately felt anxiety because my workload, normally it's like whenever someone texts me, it's something they need of me or because we're in a situation, right? Yeah. I tried this with myself, is that I no longer see any notifications that if I'm gonna go read my email, it's at a certain time that I'm gonna go read my emails all at one time, and I'm gonna respond to them all at one time.
Oh, wow.
And so therefore, I don't have to allocate more energy than I have to, and it also doesn't cause me as much anxiety.
I see.
So it's like, and whenever I'm gonna go read my messages, it's because I'm sitting down, I'm in a calm state of mind, and I don't feel like I have to respond immediately, because what used to happen is that I used to get notifications, and if I felt like I immediately had to have a response for it. But doing that really, really helped me um, allocate my time and be way more efficient. But the thing is that I really, really always felt disturbed is that I felt anxiety, like just because a text message got to me,
Yeah.
and and I didn't even know what it was. Like I still didn't even know what
You
it
didn't know
was.
what it was, and it was making you anxious.
It made me anxious, and ever since then I was like, okay, maybe social media or even just constantly having notifications on my phone isn't necessarily good for me. Like maybe if I allocate a certain time during the day to do this, then like I'll be a lot calmer. I won't feel like I have something to do, or feel the anxiety, because that's the best way I can describe it. I just felt anxiety.
Yeah. So I mean, you would have this designated time during the day to check your email,
Mm-hmm.
and then you would respond to all the emails
Yeah.
in that period of time,
Yeah.
and then you wouldn't go back to it at any other point in the
No,
day.
no, because it's again, like I feel like if we just constantly have to be receptive to this, then we just essentially have no control over our own lives.
Yeah,
It's like
right.
you just have to respond all the time. Like
Yes,
you have to
yeah,
be.
you kind of have no choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, but whenever you would get text messages like that would make you anxious. Were you ever like feeling like you wanted the text message, like you wanted something to be there, or was it always like?
No, I would always want. I'd rather there be no text message.
Yeah.
But the thing is that whenever I would go and there was no text message, I also felt the same emotions of like, okay, like why isn't there
Yeah.
someone here,
Isn't that
something here?
interesting?
Yeah, it is. It's like
It's a paradox.
why do you want something to be there?
Yeah, like when something's not there, it's like, why doesn't anybody need me, or why isn't anyone paying attention to me? But then when there is something there, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed. Yeah.
What sort of programs, or how do you work with schools? Because I've seen you've attended some schools. Like how do you introduce this idea, and what are the students like whenever you're introducing this idea? And I think it's good that you're young, and you're not someone older. I feel like younger kids, even me when I was younger, I wouldn't really listen to my the older people. So it's like it's good that you're a role model at this young age. What is it like going to these schools, and what is it like talking to administration, and going about these things?
It's very fulfilling, and the main role I have with schools is mainly speaking. So I'll go and I'll give talks to the students, to the parents, or the educators, and but each group is different, and you have to introduce the topic in a way that where you're not going to be too negative, and you have to do it in a way where you can get their attention, and but most importantly allow them to be receptive, because I go into the presentation and I think, okay, they've heard this probably from their parents, from their teachers, about, oh, social media is bad, you're spending too much time on your phone.
Yeah.
And that's not always necessarily true, but I would hope that seeing me being younger and also kind of in their same shoes, that they would be more receptive to it. And so the very first thing that I do is I like to make sure that they feel some sort of personal relevance to the topic.
Okay.
And I mean, you have to make it fun, and so I ask a lot of questions in the beginning, and I get them to participate and engage, and I throw in some of these jokes, and they start laughing, and you have to make it an experience, and you have to make it something that they will deem as worthwhile, and that they will be put in a positive mindset for the rest of the presentation, because we do cover some tough content about mental health and the reality of it all, and the challenges and people's stories, and I want them to be focused, but I want them to be in a mood state that is going to be receptive, and I want them to walk away with something inspiring.
But in the mental health aspect, then it's causing a lot of mental health issues these days.
It's difficult to say that social media is the cause of mental illness, simply because we just don't have enough data on that. But we are seeing sort of these associations between the time that social media started to increase and the time that mental health conditions started to increase. Now, whether the mental health epidemic that we are in right now
Mm-hmm.
is due to social media entirely it may not be a realistic thing to say. We could possibly say that social media is one of many contributing factors to mental health conditions
Okay.
that people are experiencing.
Because it's interesting though, because you said that the young chimpanzee that was the most lonely really felt good after just kind of looking at himself, and so I kind of start to wonder then, what does an isolated person feel like when they're in social media? Because like I feel like we're also very isolated, even though we're supposed to be very connected.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
It's very ironic.
It's we have seen some research that has shown that people who have pre-existing mental health conditions are more likely to engage with social media for longer periods of time.
Does that go back to escapism?
It might. It's hard to speak in absolutes as to why they are doing it, but escapism could be one of those factors. If they feel like there's this void in their life, they feel like they can get from social media, whether that's from some sort of connection there or stimulation, instant gratification. It's hard to know for sure, but we are also in a loneliness epidemic, and for some people it's social media. They feel like they can turn to social media to feel a sense of connection and community, and in many ways it can be a positive aspect to people's life in that way, as long as it's not the main source overpowering what it means to truly connect.
Do you think it's also because we think less critically that we cannot decipher our feelings of depression? Because I constantly watch YouTube videos, and it's like depression is kind of a feeling that comes into your life, or even a sense of sadness. It's normal, but because your life is asking for change.
Yeah, I mean that could definitely be a factor. Is that saying like
well, because it's kind of like your experience. Well, I'm not saying it's similar, but it's like you felt some sort of feeling, overwhelming feeling that you just couldn't decipher, but the only way that you didn't even know what you were doing, but you were writing down, you were like and I think it's very telling that you just said you were all over the place.
I didn't know what I was doing.
So again, it's kind of like, is it because we're not inviting the idea of doing things like this that we're in this situation? Because I think that social media, all it does is, it's really, if you don't know who you are, it confuses you more.
Yes.
Even though you are trying to identify yourself, it confuses you so much.
Yeah, you do.
You're constantly bombarded by violence, by obviously like humor is one of the things that I think makes us keep on going back, which is great. Humor is great, but then you just get caught up into those notions that, oh, I'm gonna just laugh, or I'm gonna look at violence, and then that's it. You don't really ever face yourself, face your emotions, learn to decipher it.
Yeah, and that's why intentional use is so important, so that I mean it's important, because if we can't be alone with ourselves, if we can't teach ourselves how to be alone, how to face our thoughts, then we may ever only know what it feels like to be lonely. And we live in an age of hyperconnectivity, and social media makes it feel like sometimes that we need to be constantly on, constantly connecting. And that's not necessarily true, because we need to be with ourselves and in our own solitude sometimes truly be present for other people, and to truly understand ourselves. And if if we're always being stimulated, there's no space for that reflection, for that deep thinking that we need to understand our thoughts. So I mean, you're right. When I was writing everything down, when I had no choice to engage with social media, I mean, I was really making the choice to confront my thoughts and to confront this withdrawal and anticipation of reward, and try to surpass that with feelings of resilience and strength.
So in what you want to do now, do you feel like this is your life's mission to do this?
Oh my. Oh. that is a profound question. I feel like that the whole journey, I mean, writing the book and everything, it did change what I wanted to do with my life, and kind of change the trajectory of what I saw myself doing. As I thought I wanted to go into medicine. That was what I thought I really wanted to do. I mean,
nurse, doctor.
I wanted to go to medical school. I mean, I had a lab coat with my name on it. I mean, it was like my vision board, and I was really, really passionate about it for a very long time. It was. I felt like it was something that I was supposed to do. I shadowed a gastroenterologist, oncologist, and OBGYN. I mean, I was very immersed in it. And then, after working with Dr. Gandor, and writing the book and becoming so interested in human behavior and the mind and the brain and why people do what they do, and observing that, I became very fascinated with psychology, and so I think that is something that I do want to pursue, particularly within technology and in the social sciences. And so dedicating my life feels very profound at where I am in my career, but it is something that I think is very much a part of my future, looking at technology and social behavior.
Because as hearing the way that you explain yourself through the videos you've posted on YouTube, it's kind of like, man, like why this, like why this, and you just sounded so excited about it, so intentional about it, that I'm like, wow, like I would not be I would have not known that. Like, what's amazing to me that you found it on your own, that neuroplasticity, it does this to the brain, rejection does this. And so, like, even the way that you explained it, it kind of makes it seem that you have so much fun doing this. So it's I don't know if it's the impact or if it's your own curiosity that really fuels you.
It is a little bit of everything. I mean, there's a lot of different ingredients that fuel me and that motivate me. One of my mentors asked me a couple weeks ago, if you found yourself in a room with all your resources at your disposal, what couldn't you stop yourself from talking about? What couldn't you stop yourself from doing? And
what couldn't you, or could?
Couldn't you?
Okay.
And I mean, this was one of those topics. I said I'd probably start reading a bunch of things and then writing everything down, and then coming back to this topic, and it is very exciting to talk about it to me, and I'm very passionate about it. And my mentor also said, find what you love and find what you're good at, and then think about what the world needs. And I mean, this is one of those things where I feel very passionate about it, and I feel like I've had a degree of experience where I'm developing the skills that I need. I still have a lot to learn. I still feel very naive very early on in my career, but I am very grateful that it's been a topic that's been so receptive and impacts people of all different ages.
You use this word in your presentation too. the age gap
Oh,
and
digital divide.
no, it's in digital divide.
Oh,
It's
intergenerational. Of course.
intergeneration. You're like yeah, you use that word a lot. And w- what's the uh reaction that you get whenever you go up to someone older and like, hey, like I want to do this? Like, what's the reaction you get? Because are older people facing this same dilemma, or they more often want to do these type of test these type of theories because they also want to understand the youth, or is it because they're going through it themselves?
That's a great question. I think that, I mean, I can say that it's affecting everyone at all different levels, and all different scales. I mean, we're all evolving to the rapid changes in technology at the same time, but the points at which technology was introduced to people of different ages and its point in its advancement has implications for how they perceive it and how they use it and why they use it. And so if I'm looking at my grandmother, for example, who is part of the baby boomer generation, she sometimes has difficulty navigating a smartphone. And there have been times where I've seen, younger people react to this sort of difference in knowing how to navigate the technology if they're with someone way older than they are, and they approach it with a negative sort of mindset, like, why don't you know how to use this? Like, it's
Frustration,
so
right?
Frustration is what it is, and it's not productive if we are talking about this intergenerational collaboration. I mean, we need to be receptive to this, and help them. I mean, you sometimes, I don't know if you've been when you have gone to the Apple store, where they have these genius bars or they have these tutorials to help older people navigate the devices on a more functional level.
I've seen it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's actually quite incredible to know that there are people that are helping this. I mean, it is so, like, when I were with my grandmother and I see that she's having trouble, it's patience is really important there.
Which I think that even like in my experience, what I've seen from my peers is that more often they get frustrated with older generations just because our patience isn't as we haven't created patience. Our internet, I remember when the web pages used to load like in 5 minutes, right? Like, and now we want it to load in 10 seconds.
No.
So it's like our patience is declining. Our empathy is it also being affected? Like I constantly have these questions on, like, obviously, like, I won't be able to make a change on everybody because that's just the truth. But I'm like, if I can be a little bit better and be a little bit more receptive, like even to older people. I think I have so many older people around me that they've amassed this wealth of knowledge over the years, but unless you can talk to them in a way that they can understand you, they won't bring it out. And that's, I think that it would play contrary to what we're trying to do, like the intergenerational collaboration. Because if as young people we can't even speak or learn how to articulate, then how do we really get this type of knowledge that others got?
We need that. We need a thorough explanation of thoughts and dialogue and clear feelings. If we're going to be upfront with other people, different generations, to face this challenge, because there is what they call, like, the generational digital divide, that is brought upon by generational differences and technological challenge and things of that nature. And so we do need people to kind of understand how and why they're interacting with the technology within their developmental phase, and how other people are also navigating it at the same time. So it's very complex, but it's super important.
what do you like? What's the impact you expect to make as you do these seminars? What is your do you have a timeline to where you're like, okay, I'm gonna switch it now, or
Mm.
you're gonna continue this until you feel like you're fulfilled? What is it like?
I think I'm gonna keep doing it until I don't. I I think I'm just gonna keep doing it until I just don't have the time or energy. But I don't think I don't foresee ever really stop. I mean, I do. I'm 20 now,
Mm-hmm.
and which is wild to say. And I mean, this whole advocacy journey started when I was 16.
Do you feel like you're old?
I do.
Okay.
I feel like I'm old, and but I feel also so young, and I think it comes from the mindset. But I want to keep doing it, and in terms of the impact, I think that if I can leave every presentation or podcast or webinar knowing that someone learned something,
Mm-hmm.
that is powerful enough for me to know that I impacted someone's life in some way. And it is incredibly rewarding when you have young people come up to you after a presentation and be very vulnerable with their experience with technology and the online world and the challenges that they have faced, and really open up to you about it, and to say how the message that I present to the world is meaningful to them. Or there was a mother the other day when I was giving a presentation, and she came up to me and just started crying and just started pouring it all out, talking about the challenges she's faced with her son and his video games, just kind of being all consuming for him, and worrying about the family dynamic. And I mean, parents are fearful, and I've seen that. I can see it in their eyes every time I'm with them, and it creates this continuous desire to help.
Have you delved into the video game type of world?
A little bit. That's less my area of expertise, but I know that it's more common with young boys.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna tell you.
Yeah, with young girls, social media is more popular, but I've seen research about how how video games can maybe increase aggression, if they're constantly being exposed to violence. I don't know how truthful that is, how accurate that information is, but also the whole sort of like Fortnite and like video game world going on. I don't know that much about that, but what I do know is that it's very interesting to see how the culture that manifests in those video games has its way of interweaving itself into in-person culture, like the dances, the Fortnite dances.
Yeah.
I don't know that much about that, but how people they've taken those dances and then they start doing the dances in conversation. And so the way that we're interacting online and what we see online, how it's creating a presence, a lingering effect to how we interact in person, is interesting to me.
I've seen more the consequence of like I guess how it emotionally affects you. Like with my little brother, it's just like kind of like he screams a lot.
Yeah.
The reactions are heightened like a lot, and like obviously I think that's where it's important to kind of like step in, like, hey, like maybe play a little bit less. Or the thing is that, again, like kids are on their own world, that it's so hard to say that there's one way to teach children, but maybe it's like gravitate their attention to something else. Like my little brother went from like video games, like really big time, into like more like being into dirt bikes, and so like being a little bit more hands-on. And I even get surprised that he knows how to do an oil change at 12 to a bike, but he'll be a little bit more intentional in the videos that he looks up, and therefore his algorithm would change, because algorithms are also pretty funny, right? Like,
oh, they are. Yeah.
Like, and the crazy thing is that they might know you better than you know yourself. It to me is very, very crazy.
It's creepy.
Because then it could take a whole, like companies can put a whole society into thinking a certain type of way, either politically, philosophically, so many ways that they can teach young kids and to learn something in specific that they want. And so it's like I take my experiences little by little and maybe not apply it the same way to other kids, but I'm like, okay, if it's affecting my brother like this and other kid, but my brother isn't as vulnerable because he has us, like how does it affect kids that are necessarily being looked after? It's like all their, like the whole time that they're up, it's like they're playing games, right? Like they're not controlled,
right?
Or they're not even their attention isn't moved somewhere else, either to do sports or into something else that they like, because it's like you got to give children something they like, right?
Yes.
Like it's like you can't force, you can't impose authority.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, you've got to have these multiple creative outlets for them that are not just social media or not just video games, but things that are good for their physical well-being and mental well-being and something for their mind. What do you think your little brother was craving the most out of the video games?
That's a really tough question, because I think friendship.
Really? Because there is that connective feature that you can talk to people.
You can talk to people, and I'm lucky because I think that it even affects like men at my age, and young men, like that they're chronic gamers, and because they'll drop everything and they'll just game for the next 3 hours, and I'm luckily. I don't really I used to play games a lot, like car games and stuff like that, but there came a point where I like, okay, like I gotta focus my attention on other things. But the thing that my brother was seeking maybe was friends, and whenever he actually got a group of friends, they might not be the most I guess adequate friends, but he has friends outside of a computer, and like to where like they come here, they're in the pool, they obviously like use their slang and stuff like that, so it's like
sometimes people that he doesn't know.
Exactly. And so like he'll go to the fair, have these real social interactions that if you're not intentional, you really miss out in giving that to kids. And like I'm like, okay, how can I apply this maybe when I have kids? Because it's like you got to start learning these things. If you're just like oblivious to your surroundings and how kids react to things, and you don't get this capacity to make a better society, I think.
Yeah. Yes. Wow. So for him it was mainly the connection. Was there anything about the winning or like that satisfaction of getting the reward and chasing that? I mean, was there anything?
I don't think so. I don't think he was really big on winning. He was just more in like playing video games. And so that's why I asked you. I was like I know it's probably more prevalent like with young boys, but
sometimes young girls are really into it.
That too, like they're creating whole new digital worlds where you immerse yourself, and it's like the digital boyfriends, digital girlfriends too.
Dear.
It's to me it's like it's crazy. I don't know where we're going.
Well, and now I don't know if you saw it in the news. I mean, I feel like that there's something repeatedly coming out about this, that some people become so attached to these chatbots that they're talking to, like ChatGPT, and they can personalize it to react to what they're saying in very vulnerable, intimate ways. And like there was this one woman that fell in love with her AI boyfriend, and they like dated, and she like personalized it to make it say like very like affectionate things to her, and she formed a real attachment, and like was so consumed by it, and she was married, and it's
bizarre.
Like perceiving, I mean, artificial intelligence with having these human like qualities. It's just interesting.
It's really interesting, because then again it's kind of like what society are we forming, or maybe is it a Western thing? I don't know, because like when you get to actually see other other societies, whether Central America or like even European. Like, I don't know if it's just a Western thing. I don't know. You know.
I don't know. Yeah.
I haven't had the opportunity to talk to individuals in
Other countries.
yeah, of other countries. Well, yes, I mean sometimes like people's way of growing up more often kind of is telling of how they are even like when they're adults. The thing that worries me more is like just not being too emotional about things, because something goes viral because more often because of the violence, or because making fun of someone. It's like, well, what is it really doing, to the person that's being like clowned and seen by people. So I don't know. There's this huge dilemma, and like I'm glad that you're actually doing the work to try to. What are you trying to do? Stop it? Change it? Put the knowledge out there?
Yeah, I think my main perspective is to not bash technology in a negative light, or social media in a negative light. I have social media, I use it, and I have technology, I use it, and I'm going to continue to use it. It's going to continue to advance. So I don't think it's productive to say that it's all negative, because it does serve our lives in many positive ways, and many youth will acknowledge that it's a positive tool for self-expression, communication, connection, especially with peers from long distance or things of that nature, but also acknowledging the challenges and these conflicts that we have with ourselves and with other people, and the ways that technology might create those barriers in understanding each other and our own self-perception. And so education is and research is really what I'm passionate about, to understand more of how we can find this middle ground and grow productively with the digital world.
And if you could share with us, what do you like expect people, or like what do you hope people get out of your book?
The book is I mean, it's a very short read, and sometimes I reread the sentences and I think they're so simple. I mean, but it's my voice and it's who I was and it's what I was experiencing, which makes it very profound. So I hope that they will gain some sort of relevance from it, that to know that my story and what I experienced was not is also being shared by me and by other people, but also to understand why, from a psychological perspective, why we keep coming back, what's motivating us, because in how we can develop this self-awareness. There's also a parent's guide in there,
okay,
and a section on emotional intelligence and its intersection with social media, and so the book is very informative in those contexts. But I mean, that was really the catalyst for everything that happened, and it happens. I feel like I wrote the book so long ago, and I still talk about it it seems like every day, because it was such a important moment in my life. And I mean, all my friends know it, and I talk about this, and it's funny, and it's.
What's the feedback you get from your friends?
They've always been so supportive.
Okay.
So supportive, and they ask a lot of questions, and I'm very grateful for that. And they'll even tell me times when they take social media breaks and how it changes their perception sometimes. But I've never really received any negative feedback from my friends, and I'm very grateful for that. They've always been very, very supportive, and they know that I talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are other topics that you're passionate about?
I'm so much. I'm passionate about anything kind of related to just human interaction, like conversation. I love talking about conversation and what makes a good conversation, and how to know a person deeply.
I didn't have a table here before, but I've seen that in order to have a good conversation, based off some research, you need a medium, in between two people.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that true?
I didn't have a table here before, but just imagine that this table wasn't here. It would make it feel too open.
Right. Right. Oh, that's true. Oh, that is really fascinating.
So like even things like that. Whenever like I guess I didn't have it in my mind that this made conversation a little bit more easy.
Do you feel like it makes a difference?
Honestly, it does because based off kind of what I read, it's a way to bounce off, like, or even
true.
separate people because, like, whenever we first meet each other, it's kind of like you don't know me, I don't know you, so you need some type of divide to kind of like this is your space, this is my space, so it's kind of like you get what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And like I started listening to a lot of Carl Rogers. I don't know if you listen to
the psychologist.
The psychologist. Yeah. I feel like he's the best psychologist.
He's quite incredible. He's the humanistic. He's a humanistic perspective, right? Or is that?
I don't know necessarily.
There's also Carl Jung.
Carl Jung too.
Yeah, but Carl Rogers. He's a good one.
Carl Rogers, because like, have you listened to Jordan Peterson?
Yes.
Yeah. Jordan Peterson always refers back to Carl Rogers, so I always like to look for the teacher of the teacher, or even like with words, like there's always the Greek root word of whatever word, and it's like it'll give you the literal meaning of what it was. Because I read this book too. What's it called? Words That Matter, or something like that. But it talks about the evolution of language, and and so it's like the language has obviously like been redacted, but there's also a root word that we can always go back to on how we got here today. So if you get the essence of like how to articulate yourself to the root meaning, then you'll be able to convey yourself correctly, and people would be able to feel even your words, because words are funny. Like They're say so something
funny. Like, why do we know what that means?
Yeah, exactly. and then it'll make you feel a certain way when you just, and when it's supposed to be auditory. Like it
makes something so just mundane feeling. I mean, it's just a word, but it can make you, it can create so much.
And so like I always refer back to Carl Rogers because even how you're saying like the art of conversation, he's more like obviously like clinical, and he tries to change people's minds. But I think one important rule that I got from him is that making feel the other person you're talking to matter by what they're saying, like actually listening to them, instead of you imposing what you want to say, makes everything better.
It really does. Yeah, I mean, and you make them feel seen. And that's a skill probably as a podcaster that you naturally have, is like asking questions and being, probing the right questions, and those deep questions that are so important. I mean people they say that people love talking about themselves as like the number one way. It's I like to ask more questions though. I ask a lot of questions. Like, this is why it's like I do this, because I enjoy talking about what I love, but in typical conversation I ask a lot of questions.
But that could even seem sometimes invasive, because it can make other people feel like you're just trying to take out of them.
Yeah, right.
So you gotta have to be careful.
There's gotta be a good mix. I once heard that there's two types of people in conversation. There's a giver and there's a taker. And the giver is the one that just talks and talks and makes all the statements, and the taker is the one that takes the information and asks questions about it. And there's got to be kind of a good mix in the conversation, because there's too many questions and you're not really getting to any sort of context. But then if there's so much context, and if there's just no questions, and it's just you're lingering on the same. So it's interesting. Conversation is fascinating.
Like, did you feel like you were an introvert?
Interestingly, I feel like coming to college has made me more of an introvert.
Really?
Yeah. Most people would say I'm more extro. I have very extroverted tendencies, and I'm in any social situation. I can do the small talk. I can do the networking, but my social battery needs to be recharged pretty often.
And how do you do that?
I do that by being alone in solitude, exercise, music, writing, walking, long walks, very long walks.
Okay.
Anything that where I can be alone or writing and just kind of feel like I can just be me in my own space. That's very energizing. What do you do?
I like to read. I like to write. When I really feel like life is getting to me, I like to listen to instrumentals.
Oh,
like
classical music?
Like there's a lot of instrumentals that aren't necessarily classic pieces.
Yeah.
That I don't know, like just even some movie soundtracks sometimes are
like what was on before?
Yeah,
that was really nice.
Yeah,
I really liked that.
Yeah, so pieces like that, it really clears out your mind. And I've listened to a lot of mentors, but like there's just so much knowledge out here that you have to be picky. And maybe sometimes some lessons are being reiterated again and again. What really helped me create some type of mental fortitude, or even help me create this podcast and like be a little bit engaging, because I used to not be a conversation person. I've never really been good at making friends either.
Really?
But I read the book. I read how to make people like you and make friends by what's his name? He's a really good writer. But I read a book on how to make friends.
Yeah.
And it was like, just ask more questions and you talk about yourself. And so like that's taken me on such a big journey. I like to read a lot of things about mindfulness, but not too much about it, because again, it's very simple.
Do what you feel like makes you recharge. Yeah.
I like a lot of old teachers. Earl Nightingale.
Yes.
Earl Nightingale has such an intonation to his voice. It's so powerful that to me it just speaks to me. And so listening to people like that, classical music, reading just about anything. I actually like romance novels more than anything.
Yeah, right.
Just because the drama.
Oh, the drama. The drama will keep you hooked to it.
Yeah. And I used to read a lot of self-development books, but I think that again, it's like they reiterate the same thing a whole bunch of times.
But at least you get to see what the themes are.
Okay, I had never
maybe
thought about it like that. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. But they do probably the same things.
Yeah, but Keegan, thank you so much for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Anything that you want to share with us before that we cut it off?
I think, the thing that I think that, technology's here to stay, social media is here to stay, and I think we have a responsibility, as do tech companies, whether or not they are receptive to our suggestions, to together make a more responsible digital world. And I'm hopeful, and I'm optimistic about what we can do and how we can do it, but we need to stay grounded and skeptical and be aware of how the technology is affecting us and our interactions with each other, and conversation and empathy, and these very sacred human qualities that are very much a part of who we are.
And I appreciate you taking the time, driving down here for 4 hours away. Where can we find you? Where can we find your book? How can people contact you?
Yeah, you can find my website. It's www.keeganwlee.com. And then my book is on Amazon. It's called 60 Days of Disconnect. It's also on Barnes & Noble's website, and you can get it in hardcover and ebook format.
Which one do you like better?
Oh, definitely the hardcover.
Okay.
I mean, you've got to have the at least in my preference, the tangible handheld book is really nice, because then you can annotate in dog ear and do all the things. But the ebook is also very nice too. It's very convenient. So
yeah.
Either one, and then all my contact information is on my website, and that's all. Thank you so much. This was really inspiring and enlightening and enriching, and I really enjoyed this
No,
conversation.
and thank you for again, I reach out to people and it's like a cold call, right? Like it's a hit or miss, but I really always
You never
appreciate
know.
that, like, even kind of like you took your journey without you really realizing the impact that you're doing. When I actually find it very inspiring, because it's like you can stick to one thing and keep going at it, making a lasting impact. And it's not even for you, it's for youth, it's for the pursuit of connections between a younger crowd and an older crowd, and making them actually find a middle ground, speak, connect, and you being so young too, I feel like you're just getting started, and I only hope the best for you.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you. I hope that, yeah, that's why I always say if it impacts one person, it's successful. So
Thank you, Keegan. And
thank you.
guys, if you stayed this long, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. I'll have all the links to Keegan, uh, all of Keegan's links down below, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Keegan, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.